All right, so buckle up because today we are diving into a pretty fascinating topic. It's all about history on screen, but not just like the history they show us, you know what I mean? It's more about what these movies tell us about the time they were actually made in. Like, what does a movie about ancient Rome actually say about, say, 1950s America? Pretty cool,
It
right?
really is. It's like each
Oh.
film carries this hidden message about the era that created it. And unpacking that message, that's where things get interesting, really.
And thankfully, we've got this stack of academic essays to guide us. Don't worry, I know academic essays doesn't exactly scream thrilling roller coaster ride, but trust me, this stuff is gold.
Oh, absolutely. These essays make a really compelling case that we as viewers and even historians sometimes miss key insights because we don't approach films the same way we do, say, a written document.
That's fascinating. So, are you saying there's a whole other layer to these movies we're missing, like a secret code we need to crack?
Exactly. Think about it. Historians spend their lives analyzing speeches, letters, even grocery lists from the past, trying to squeeze out every drop of meaning. But films, we often view them as pure entertainment, and Peter Burke, one of the historians we read, argues that's a huge blind spot.
Okay, I'm hooked already. Tell me more about this Peter Burke guy. What's he saying exactly?
Well, he's not saying historians should ditch the dusty archives and just camp out in front of a screen, but he asks saying that visual sources like film offer valuable insights that we often overlook. Just like we analyze a political cartoon for its subtle messages, we need to apply those same critical thinking skills to film.
So it's not just about whether a movie gets the date of a battle right, but about what exactly? I'm all ears.
It's about understanding the subtle ways a film communicates, the lighting, the music, even the way a scene is edited. These all reflect the cultural norms, anxieties, even the prejudices of the time the film was made.
Whoa. Okay, so a movie about like gladiators in ancient Rome, but made in, say, the 1980s, might actually tell us more about 1980s fears than, actual Roman history.
You got it. And that's not to say that historical accuracy isn't important. It definitely is. But these essays are pushing us to consider the subtext, the layers beneath the surface. This whole idea of objectivity, like there's one single true version of history, filmmakers play with that constantly.
Okay, give me an example. How does a film actually create that illusion of just one truth?
Okay, picture this. A classic World War II film, right? Heroic Americans fighting for freedom. The way the camera focuses on their faces, the dialogue emphasizing their bravery, maybe even the swelling music in the background. It all comes together to present the American perspective as the right one, even if the historical reality is far more complex.
It's like we're being subtly persuaded without even realizing it. Kind of creepy when you think about it.
Exactly. And that's what makes a film like Clint Eastwood's Letters from Iwo Jima so interesting. Instead of presenting us with just one definitive, this is how it happened version of the battle, he gives us both the American and the Japanese perspectives. And it's jarring because we're forced to confront the fact that there's no single truth in war. Everyone has their own experience, their own trauma, their own version of the story.
That makes so much sense. But if every film has a perspective, if none of them are truly objective, does that mean striving for historical accuracy is kind of pointless?
That is the big question, right?
Yeah.
And Natalie Zama Davis, another scholar we read, she would say absolutely not. She argues that even if a film doesn't get every single detail right, even if it plays a little fast and loose with the facts, its power lies in making us feel something. It's about connecting with the past on an emotional level.
Okay, I can get behind that.
You would.
Honestly, a movie that makes me feel something, makes me connect with these people from the past, is going to stick with me a lot longer than one that just throws dates and battles at me.
Exactly. It's about empathy, about stepping into someone else's shoes, even if those shoes are from a different century. Think about the film El Espíritu de la Colmena, The Spirit of the Beehive, in English. It's set in 1940s Spain, just after the Civil War, and it explores this really dark time in Spanish history through the eyes of a young girl. Now, the historical details are there, but it's the emotional journey, her fear, her isolation, the way she finds solace in this fantastical world of her own creation that really stays with you.
And that's what makes you want to learn more. It's that spark, that emotional connection that makes you want to dig deeper into the real history. But let's be real for a second. Actually making these movies, especially period pieces, the costumes, the sets, the props, it just seems insanely difficult.
Oh, absolutely. Our sources actually go behind the scenes a bit, and trust me, it is not all glamour. Bringing history to life on screen comes with its own unique set of challenges. It can be a real headache sometimes, to be honest.
Okay, spill the tea. What's one thing that we as viewers would never even think about?
Well, for starters, budget. Imagine trying to recreate ancient Rome on a shoestring budget. Good luck. And then there's the pressure of time. Film sets are like well-oiled machines, or at least they're supposed to be, and delays can be incredibly costly.
Oh, I bet. Talk about stress. Just thinking about it makes me anxious. But there must be some amazing stories from those sets.
Oh, I'm sure there are tons of them. And, audiences these days, they've come to expect a certain look in their period films. Like they can tell when something's a little too perfect, a little too new.
You mean like no freshly painted sets or brand new furniture allowed?
Exactly. Audiences are smart. They want to be transported to another time and a little wear and tear. Well, that just adds to the authenticity. It's all about creating a believable illusion, even if it means making things look, older than they actually are.
Wow, who knew? The things you learn making these deep dives. But speaking of illusions, let's shift gears a bit and talk about adaptations. We've got two Spanish productions in our stack of sources that tackle this head-on. La Regenta, which is a film, and then Amar en Tiempos Revueltos, a TV series. Both of them are wrestling with this challenge of bringing history to the screen, but in totally different ways.
It's a fascinating comparison, isn't it, with La Regenta, because it's based on a novel. The filmmakers had to make some tough choices right off the bat, what to keep, what to cut, what to emphasize. You can't just cram an entire book into a 2-hour film, right?
Right. It's more about capturing the essence, the soul of the story, but in a completely different medium.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in this case, the film really focuses on the psychology of the characters, their inner struggles, and through them, through their very personal journeys, we get this glimpse into Spain during the Restoration period. So it's history, yes, but it's deeply, deeply personal.
Then you've got Amar en Tiempos Revueltos, which, wow, this show ran for seasons. Talk about a completely different beast. They had the time to really dig into different periods of Spanish history, specifically under Franco's rule.
And they used that time to do something really interesting. They showed us history through the eyes of everyday people. So not just Franco himself or the big political players, but regular folks just trying to live their lives, find love, raise families, all while this, huge historical drama is unfolding around them.
It's funny, the more we talk about this, the more I realize how much these films, even if they're set decades, centuries ago, they end up revealing about the time they were made in. It's like they're almost like cultural time capsules in a way.
I love that, cultural time capsules. And James Amelane, another scholar in our stack, he puts it brilliantly. He says that some of the most enjoyable, the most insightful historical films are actually what he calls good, bad movies.
Good, bad movies. Okay, now you have to explain that one. Give me an example of a good, bad movie that, even if it plays fast and loose with the facts, still has something to offer.
Oh, there are so many. Think about all the different versions of the Three Musketeers that have been made over the years. We've had silent films, swashbuckling adventures, even comedies, and each one, even the kind of cheesy ones, they reflect the filmmaking styles, the cultural anxieties, even the fashion of their time. So even if they're not historically perfect, they offer this fascinating window into how our view of the past has changed over time.
So you're saying that watching, a cheesy old Robin Hood movie with Errol Flynn can actually be educational, mind officially blown. But what makes those good, bad movies work? Why do we enjoy them even if we know they're not 100% accurate?
It all comes back to that emotional connection, right? Robert Rosenstone, the film scholar, he talks about how a film doesn't have to be a dry, boring history lesson to be valuable.
Yeah.
It's about evoking emotion, making us connect with the past on this gut level.
100%. I mean, I can read a textbook about World War II, but it's a movie like Saving Private Ryan that really gets to me. Suddenly, I'm not just reading about history, I'm right there in the trenches. It's the emotional intensity that makes it real, that makes it stick.
Exactly. And that emotional resonance, that's what sparks curiosity. That's what makes you want to learn more. You watch a powerful film, you feel something, and suddenly you want to know more. You want to dig deeper into the real history behind the story.
It's that spark, that initial intrigue that sends you down the rabbit hole of historical research. But okay, emotion aside, let's get real about the nitty-gritty of filmmaking for a second. Because making any movie is a massive undertaking. But period pieces, with the costumes, the sets, the props, it just seems mind-bogglingly complicated.
Oh, you have no idea. Our source material actually has a whole section called, and I love this title, Experiences in Period Film, Attempting a Homemade Recipe. And let me tell you, it sounds way more chaotic than baking a cake.
I bet. So give it to me straight. What's one thing about making a period film that would surprise us non-movie folks?
The level of detail, oh my goodness, the detail. Everything from the type of fabric used in a costume to the type of nails used on a set, it all has to be researched and sourced meticulously. It's about creating this whole believable world, but it's also about avoiding those eagle-eyed viewers who can spot an inaccuracy from a mile away.
No way. So you're telling me if a film's set in, like, the Victorian era uses the wrong kind of butter, someone out there is going to notice.
Oh, absolutely. There's a whole community of history buffs and film fans who pride themselves on spotting those little historical bloopers. It's all part of the fun, I guess.
That's dedication. But I can also see how it would drive a filmmaker absolutely bonkers.
Absolutely. And honestly, that's just the tip of the iceberg. The author of this section, Ushua Castillo Espinal, she talks about the challenges of recreating historical settings on a budget, the pressure of staying on schedule, the constant collaboration between all the different departments, costumes, makeup, set design. It's like conducting an orchestra, but with costumes and props instead of instruments.
It's like this perfectly choreographed dance where one wrong step can throw the whole thing off.
That's a great way to put it. And it's not just about visual accuracy either. Remember, Amar en Tiempos Revueltos, our Spanish TV series. Well, they faced their own set of unique challenges, especially when it came to the dialogue.
Oh, right. Because you can't just have characters from, like, 1940 Spain walking around spouting off modern slang. So how do they even go about getting that right?
Yeah. It's a painstaking process, honestly. One of the show's writers, Rodolphe Serrera, he talks about this in our sources. He said they practically lived in libraries, poring over old slang dictionaries, listening to radio programs from the period, even interviewing people who actually lived through that era. Talk about dedication.
Wow, they really did their homework. It's like they had to become amateur historians themselves just to figure out how people actually spoke back then.
Right. And Serrera talks about this added pressure of producing a daily series. Unlike a film, where you have a set shooting schedule, a daily series is constantly in production. It's like this moving train that never stops, and they're just shoveling coal into the engine trying to keep up.
So less room for error. Less time to perfect those tiny historical details we were just talking about.
Pretty much. And sometimes, compromises had to be made. Serrera mentions that they often had to rely on younger, less experienced crew members, simply because of the sheer volume of work. And while these younger folks were full of energy and fresh ideas, they didn't always have that deep well of historical knowledge to draw on.
That's a tough position to be in, trying to balance historical accuracy with the practical realities of a really demanding production schedule.
Exactly. But even with all those challenges, Amar en Tiempos Revueltos managed to capture the attention of millions of viewers and offer this really intimate look at daily life in Francoist Spain. It's really a testament to the dedication and the creativity of the entire team.
I'm starting to think that making a historical film or TV show is less like conducting an orchestra and more like running a marathon, but while juggling flaming torches.
That might be the most accurate description I've heard all day.
Yeah.
But, it's not just the practical challenges, right? There are these deeper, more intellectual hurdles to clear as well.
Like what else could possibly go wrong at this point?
Well, this is where things get really interesting. Serrera talks about this danger of presentism. It's basically the tendency to view the past through the lens of our present-day values and judgments.
Oh, okay. I see how that could be a problem. It's like judging people from the 1800s for not being woke enough. We can't impose our modern-day standards on the past. That's not fair.
Exactly. And Serrera argues that this is a trap that even the most well-intentioned filmmakers can fall into. It takes a conscious effort to try and understand the past on its own WN terms, even if we find some aspects of it uncomfortable or unfamiliar. It's about resisting that urge to judge and instead trying to understand the complexities of the time.
So making a historical film, it's like walking this tightrope between entertaining us, keeping us engaged, but also challenging us to confront the complexities of the past without imposing our own modern-day morality on it.
Now you're getting it. And luckily for us, we actually have another perspective on Amar en Tiempos Revueltos in our stack of sources, and I think you'll find this particularly interesting.
Okay, lay it on me. What's this other perspective on Amar en Tiempos Revueltos? Because, we're talking about a period of Spanish history that's pretty heavy, right? Franco, the dictatorship, the aftermath of the Civil War. It's a lot.
It is. It's a lot to unpack. And Josep Luis Serrera, another one of the show's writers, and I'm not sure if he's related to Rodolphe Serrera, the other writer we mentioned, maybe it's a Spanish thing. Anyway, Josep argues that one of the show's biggest strengths was its ability to handle those complexities without shying away from them.
Interesting. So how'd they do that? How'd they manage to balance, historical accuracy with keeping things engaging for viewers?
Well, Serrera says that by focusing on everyday life under Franco's rule, they were able to show history in a really intimate, personal way. It wasn't just about the politics, the big speeches, the battles. It was about how those events impacted ordinary people going about their lives.
So instead of just focusing on, like, Franco himself, they focused on the people living under his regime.
Exactly. It was about showing the human face of history.
Mm-hmm.
And Joseph Luis Serrera, he argues that Amar en Tiempos Revueltos did a really amazing job of bringing those stories to life, using tons of little historical details to ground the drama, make it feel real. He talks about their use of archival footage, period music. They even painstakingly recreated this fictional square in Madrid, the Plaza de los Frutos, where a lot of the show takes place.
Wow, talk about attention to detail. It's like they built a whole world for those characters to inhabit, a world that felt real and believable and lived in, even if it was all happening on a soundstage somewhere.
Precisely. And, by showing how these characters navigated life under Franco, the show actually brought up some pretty big, pretty uncomfortable questions about how we view the past. Joseph Luis Herrera, he talks about how the show didn't shy away from exploring things like gender roles at the time, class differences, even political dissent under a dictatorship.
That IS heavy stuff. So how they managed to tackle all that? It's a TV show, right? They've got to keep things entertaining.
Right, and Serrera says they were very, very careful to avoid easy answers. They didn't want to present this black and white, good versus evil version of history. They wanted to show the nuances, the gray areas of that period, and challenge viewers to think critically about the choices people made, especially when there were no good choices to be made.
Because history is rarely about good guys and bad guys. It's about real people making impossible choices in often impossible circumstances.
Exactly, and sometimes those choices don't fit neatly into our modern-day ideas of right and wrong. And that's okay. It's okay to be challenged. It's okay to wrestle with those complexities. And I think that's what Amar en Tiempos Revueltos did so well. By grappling with those tough questions, they invited viewers to have this conversation not just about the past, but about how the past continues to shape Spain today.
It's like this TV show, this fictional story, became a way for Spaniards to process a really difficult, really complex period in their history.
That's amazing. It is. And it gets to the heart of what we've been talking about, the power of historical storytelling.
Mm.
Even when it's fictionalized, even when it takes liberties with the facts.
It all circles back to that idea we keep coming back to, that film and television, while not perfect representations of history, can be really powerful tools for understanding the past, for sparking conversations, for making us think about things in new ways.
Absolutely. Watching a historical film or a TV show, it's like having this conversation with history itself.
Mm.
It can be messy, it can be subjective, there can be arguments, disagreements.
But it's always illuminating. And sometimes it's those so-called good bad movies, those films that might not get every single historical detail right, that actually spark our curiosity the most.
100%. Because at the end of the day, it's not about memorizing dates and names, right?
Mm.
It's about the human stories behind those dates, the emotions, the struggles, the triumphs. It's about recognizing that history isn't this dead thing we study in textbooks. It's alive. It's all around us.
Well said. And on that note, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about how films shape our view of history, the challenges of actually making those films, and the responsibility that comes with telling those stories.
It's been a fascinating deep dive, that's for sure.
It really has. So to everyone listening, the next time you settle in for a historical drama, keep those questions in mind, right? Think about the choices the filmmakers made, the stories they chose to tell, and what those choices say about our own relationship to the past. Because ultimately, history belongs to all of us. It's a conversation that's still being written.
Beautifully said.
And on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive. Until next time, happy viewing, everyone.